The massive crystalline chamber hummed with tension as Ambassador Sarah Chun walked through the towering doors of the Galactic Council headquarters. Her simple black suit stood out starkly against the elaborate robes and biomechanical appendages of the alien delegates who watched her every move. The air itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation, charged with the collective breath of 1,000 different species. High above, the council speaker, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish made of pure energy, pulsed with colors that translated roughly to formal greeting protocols. The translation device in Sarah's ear crackled to life. Representative of the species known as humans, you stand before the assembled wisdom of 347 civilizations. We welcome you to this historic moment. Sarah nodded respectfully, her hands clasped behind her back. She had practiced this moment countless times, but nothing could have prepared her for the sheer scale of the chamber. Delegates floated, crawled, slithered, and walked in formations that defied human understanding of physics. Some communicated through bioluminescent displays, others through complex pheromone clouds, and a few seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Zephyrian delegate, a creature that looked like a metallic praying mantis the size of a small building, stepped forward. Its voice resonated through quantum harmonics that made Sarah's bones vibrate. Humans of Earth, your species has achieved faster-than-light travel through methods that continue to baffle our scientists. Your rapid technological advancement and unique problem-solving capabilities have earned you a place among the civilized races of this galaxy. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. Sarah could see approval in the body language of species she was still learning to read. The Aquarians' tentacles swayed in what she had been told was their equivalent of polite applause, while the silicon-based crystallites chimed in harmonious frequencies. Therefore, the Zephyrian continued, we offer you membership in the Lesser Council of Developing Civilizations. This is an honor rarely bestowed upon a species so young. You would gain access to our trade networks, our educational databases, and protection under the Greater Galactic Accords. The terms appeared as holographic text in multiple languages, floating before Sarah's eyes. The translation was flawless, courtesy of technology far beyond anything Earth had developed. She read through the clauses carefully, noting the restrictions on technological development, the mandatory sharing of scientific discoveries, and the requirement to adopt standardized galactic social structures. Your species would benefit enormously, added the Vorthan representative, a being that existed as a swirling mass of gas contained within a force field suit. No more wars, no more hunger, no more inequality. We have solved these primitive problems millennia ago. Sarah looked up from the floating contract, her expression unreadable. The chamber fell silent, waiting for what they assumed would be grateful acceptance. Even the usually chattering pixie-class hive minds had stopped their constant background chatter. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Sarah began, her voice clear and steady. On behalf of the United Earth government and all of humanity, I must respectfully decline this generous offer. The silence that followed was so complete that Sarah could hear the subtle hum of the station's artificial gravity generators. Then, as if a dam had burst, the chamber erupted in confusion. Delegates began talking, clicking, humming, and flashing in their various forms of communication. The translation system struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Decline. The energy being serving as council speaker pulsed rapidly through a spectrum of colors that Sarah's briefing materials had indicated meant extreme confusion. There must be some translation error. No species has ever declined membership in the Lesser Council. Sarah shook her head. There is no translation error. Humanity appreciates the offer, but we must decline. The Aquarian delegate's tentacles writhed in agitation. Perhaps you do not understand the benefits we offer. Access to medical technology that could extend your brief lifespans by centuries. Agricultural methods that could feed your entire population with minimal resources. Energy systems that would make scarcity a forgotten concept. We understand the benefits, Sarah replied calmly. But we also understand the costs. The crystallite representative chimed with what sounded like amusement. Costs. Young human, there are no costs. Only guidance from your betters. We offer to lift your species from its current primitive state. Sarah's jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained diplomatic. That guidance comes with conditions that humanity finds unacceptable. The mandatory adoption of your social structures would eliminate the diversity that has driven human innovation. The restrictions on independent technological development would stun our growth. And the requirement to surrender our cultural autonomy is simply not negotiable. The Zephyrian delegate made a sound like grinding metal, which Sarah had learned indicated deep confusion among their species. Your cultural autonomy has produced nothing but conflict and suffering. Our methods have brought peace to countless civilizations. Your methods have brought uniformity, Sarah corrected. There is a difference between peace and the absence of growth. The council speaker's colors shifted to what Sarah's briefings had indicated was patronizing patience. Human representative, you speak of growth, but your species is barely 3 centuries past your industrial revolution. The youngest member of this council achieved interstellar travel when your ancestors were still discovering fire. Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. And yet, here we are, having achieved faster-than-light travel through methods none of you understand, having solved problems in ways none of you predicted, having created technologies that don't exist in your databases. This caused another stir among the delegates. The Vorthan representative's gaseous form swirled more rapidly. Accidental discoveries. Lucky breaks. Your species lacks the methodical approach of true civilization. Perhaps, Sarah conceded. But those accidents and lucky breaks have served us well. We've learned that innovation comes from diversity of thought, from the friction of different ideas competing and combining in unexpected ways. Your offer would eliminate that friction, the energy being pulsed in frustration. You speak as if your chaotic methods are superior to eons of proven techniques. How many of your people have died in wars that our guidance could have prevented? How many suffer from diseases we cured long before your star formed? Sarah's expression grew somber. Too many. But those struggles have also taught us things that comfort and guidance never could. They've taught us resilience, creativity, and the value of what we protect. Our conflicts have produced our greatest works of art, our most profound philosophical insights, and our most revolutionary scientific breakthroughs. The Aquarian delegate's tentacles curled in what Sarah recognized as disgust. You romanticize suffering. This is a sign of an immature species. We don't romanticize it, Sarah replied firmly. We learn from it. And we've learned that growth requires challenge, that innovation requires pressure, that progress requires the freedom to fail and try again. The crystallite's harmonics shifted to a lower, more threatening frequency. You would rather watch your people suffer than accept our help. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as she could. We would rather face our challenges as ourselves than accept solutions that would make us into something we're not. Humanity doesn't want to be saved from being human. The council speaker's colors cycled through what Sarah could only assume was the energy being's equivalent of deep thought. Finally, it pulsed in a deep blue that indicated formal pronouncement. This is unprecedented. No species has ever refused our initial offer. We must convene to discuss alternative proposals. Sarah bowed slightly. Humanity will consider any proposal that respects our autonomy and our right to determine our own path. As the session ended and delegates began filing out in their various ways, Sarah caught fragments of conversation through her translator. Most were expressing confusion, some anger, and a few what might have been grudging respect. She had expected this reaction. What she hadn't expected was how it would feel to stand alone among so many advanced civilizations and say no to everything they offered. But as she walked back toward the docking bay where her ship waited, Sarah felt a surge of pride. Humanity had just announced to the galaxy that they intended to remain human, whatever the cost. The real test, she knew, would come with whatever proposals the council came up with next. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah's first appearance before the Galactic Council, and the news of humanity's refusal had spread throughout civilized space like ripples in a cosmic pond. Trade networks buzzed with speculation, academic institutions debated the implications, and some species had begun placing bets on how quickly the stubborn humans would change their minds. Sarah stood once again in the crystalline chamber, but this time the atmosphere was different. The casual confidence she had observed in the delegates during their first meeting had been replaced by something that felt almost like uncertainty. For beings accustomed to predictable outcomes, humanity's behavior had introduced an uncomfortable variable into their calculations. The council speakers' energy patterns were more subdued today, cycling through cooler blues and greens instead of the warm golds of formal ceremony. Human representative, the council has spent considerable time crafting new proposals that we believe will address your species' unique concerns. Sarah nodded, maintaining the same calm composure that had served her well in the first meeting. She had spent the intervening weeks in intensive consultations with Earth, analyzing every word of the initial offer and preparing for whatever came next. The Zephyrian delegate stepped forward, its metallic limbs clicking against the crystal floor in what Sarah had learned was a sign of careful consideration. We have created what we call the Human Adaptation Protocol. This would allow your species to maintain many of your cultural practices while still benefiting from our guidance. The new contract materialized in holographic form, and Sarah began reading immediately. It was longer than the first proposal, filled with clauses that seemed designed to address her previous objections. There were provisions for cultural preservation zones, limited technological independence, and graduated integration schedules. As you can see, the Aquarian delegate interjected, its tentacles weaving complex patterns of emphasis. We have listened to your concerns. Your species would be permitted to maintain its diversity within designated parameters. Your art, your music, your literature could continue to develop along natural lines. Sarah continued reading, noting the subtle restrictions embedded within seemingly generous terms. The cultural preservation zones were limited to areas that wouldn't interfere with galactic trade routes. The technological independence was restricted to developments that didn't exceed current galactic standards. The graduated integration was designed to slowly erode human autonomy over several generations. Furthermore, added the Vorthan representative, its gaseous form swirling with what Sarah had learned indicated enthusiasm. We offer immediate solutions to your most pressing planetary crises. Climate restoration technology, population management systems, resource optimization protocols. Your world could be healed within a single solar cycle. The chamber filled with expectant silence as Sarah finished reading. The delegates watched her with the patience of beings who had outlived entire stellar cycles, confident that no rational species could refuse such a comprehensive offer. Honored council members, Sarah began, and once again the chamber stilled to complete silence. While we appreciate the considerable effort that went into crafting this proposal, humanity must again respectfully decline. This time, the reaction was more controlled but no less intense. The council speaker's colors shifted rapidly through patterns Sarah couldn't interpret, while the crystallite delegate's harmonics climbed to frequencies that made the chamber's structure resonate audibly. This is beyond unprecedented, the energy being declared. It borders on the irrational. We offer solutions to problems that have plagued your species since its inception, and you refuse. Sarah had expected this reaction, but she had also spent weeks preparing her response. The council continues to misunderstand humanity's position. You see our problems as flaws to be corrected. We see them as challenges that define us. The Zephyrian's metallic frame shuddered with what might have been frustration. Your climate crisis threatens the habitability of your entire planet. Our technology could reverse centuries of damage in months. And, in doing so, you would remove humanity's incentive to develop our own solutions, Sarah replied. Our environmental challenges are teaching us things about sustainability, about the interconnectedness of natural systems, about the long-term consequences of our choices. If you simply fix the problem for us, we lose that education. The Aquarian delegate's tentacles writhed in agitation. Education? Your species is destroying its own habitat while you speak of education. This is madness. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Our species has also begun developing revolutionary new approaches to environmental restoration precisely because we face these challenges. Our fusion breakthrough came from energy scarcity. Our atmospheric processors were invented in response to air pollution. Our closed-loop agricultural systems emerged from food crisis pressures. Primitive solutions to problems we solved millennia ago. The crystallite chimed dismissively, Solutions that work differently than yours, Sarah corrected. Our atmospheric processors use quantum field manipulation that your science considers impossible. Our fusion reactors achieve efficiency ratios your models say can't exist. Our agricultural systems produce genetic diversity that your standardized methods eliminated long ago. This statement caused a stir among the delegates. Sarah caught fragments of rapid communication between species, technical discussions about human innovations that apparently challenged accepted galactic science. The Vorthan representative's gaseous form contracted slightly. Even if your methods show promise, the cost and suffering while you develop them is unacceptable to civilized standards. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as possible. That suffering has produced something else you might not understand. It has produced humans who don't give up. When faced with impossible odds, we don't surrender or seek easier paths. We innovate. We adapt. We find ways to win that no one expects. The council speaker pulsed in deep blue contemplation. You speak of your species as if these traits are beneficial. But, from our perspective, they appear to be symptoms of an immature civilization that hasn't learned to accept help. Perhaps, Sarah acknowledged. But, consider this. In the 3 centuries since we achieved spaceflight, humanity has made technological advances that some of your member species took millennia to achieve. Our chaotic, inefficient, suffering-prone methods have produced innovation at a rate that apparently surprises you. The chamber fell silent again as delegates processed this statement. Sarah could see the recognition in their body language, the grudging acknowledgement that human technological development had indeed exceeded normal projections. Moreover, Sarah continued, pressing her advantage, humanity has observed something interesting about galactic civilization. For all its peace and prosperity, for all its advanced technology and solved social problems, it has become remarkably static. When was the last time any council species made a truly revolutionary breakthrough? When did any of you last discover something that fundamentally changed your understanding of the universe? The silence that greeted this question was telling. Sarah could see delegates exchanging glances, or the equivalent among species that didn't have eyes. We offer you the wisdom of ages, the Aquarian finally said, but its voice lacked its earlier conviction. You offer us the conclusions of ages, Sarah replied. But wisdom comes from the journey, not the destination. You would give us your answers, but answers without the struggle to find them are just facts. They don't change who you are. The Zephyrian delegate made the grinding sound that indicated deep thought among its species. What you describe sounds like a rejection of civilization itself. You prefer chaos to order, struggle to peace, uncertainty to knowledge. Sarah shook her head. We prefer growth to stagnation. We prefer the possibility of becoming something new over the certainty of remaining something old. Your civilization has achieved perfection, but perfection cannot evolve. The council speaker's colors shifted to patterns Sarah didn't recognize. And what if your evolution leads to destruction? What if your chaotic methods produce catastrophe rather than breakthrough? For the first time since entering the chamber, Sarah smiled broadly. Then, we will find a way to survive the catastrophe and learn from it. That's what humans do. We fail, we adapt, we try again. We turn disasters into opportunities and weaknesses into strengths. The energy being pulsed rapidly. This conversation suggests that no offer we make will satisfy your species. Not if that offer requires us to stop being human, Sarah confirmed. If the galaxy wants humanity as a member, it will have to accept us as we are, not as you think we should become. As the session ended, Sarah sensed a shift in the chamber's atmosphere. The certainty and condescension that had characterized the delegates' earlier interactions had been replaced by something else. Whether it was respect, concern, or merely confusion, she couldn't tell. But, for the first time, she felt that the council was truly listening to what humanity was saying. 2 months had passed since humanity's second refusal, and the Galactic Council chambers had become the site of something unprecedented in recorded galactic history, genuine uncertainty among the assembled civilizations. What had begun as a routine integration of a promising young species had evolved into a philosophical crisis that challenged assumptions held for millions of years. Sarah entered the chamber for what she had been told would be the final session. The atmosphere was electric with tension, But it was a different kind of tension than before. Where previous sessions had carried the weight of superior beings condescending to help a lesser species, this meeting felt more like equals trying to solve a puzzle that none of them fully understood. The council speaker's energy patterns were unlike anything Sarah had seen before, cycling through rapid sequences of colors that her briefing materials had never covered. When it finally spoke, its voice carried a gravity that resonated through the chamber's crystal structure. Human representative, the council has reached an unprecedented decision. Rather than offering you membership, we propose something that has never been attempted in galactic history. Sarah raised an eyebrow, but remained silent, waiting for the revelation. The Zephyrian delegate stepped forward, its metallic frame somehow conveying a sense of careful consideration that bordered on reverence. We propose to offer humanity something we have never offered any species: complete autonomy with voluntary cooperation. A new contract materialized, but this one was different from its predecessors. Where the previous documents had been dense with restrictions and requirements, this one was surprisingly brief. Sarah read it quickly, then read it again more carefully, hardly believing what she was seeing. This document, the Aquarian delegate explained, its tentacles moving in slow, measured patterns that indicated deep thought, grants humanity full independence in all matters of internal governance, technological development, and cultural evolution. The galaxy would make no demands upon your species. Sarah looked up from the contract. And in return? Nothing. The Vorthan representative replied, its gaseous form unusually stable. That is the unprecedented nature of this offer. We ask for nothing in return except the possibility of occasional voluntary cooperation on matters of mutual interest. The council speaker pulsed in deep blue contemplation. Your species has taught us something we had forgotten. In our quest to eliminate suffering and chaos from galactic civilization, we may have eliminated something equally valuable: the capacity for genuine growth and innovation. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she began to understand the implications of what was happening. Over the past 2 months, the crystallite delegate chimed in harmonics that conveyed a complex mixture of humility and excitement. Our scientists have been analyzing the technological innovations your species has achieved. We have discovered that many of your solutions violate what we consider to be fundamental laws of physics. Impossible has become possible through methods we don't understand, the Aquarian added. Your quantum field manipulations should not work according to our models, yet they clearly do. Your genetic engineering techniques produce results our theories say are unattainable. Your artificial intelligence development has taken paths we never considered. Sarah remained silent, sensing that something momentous was happening but not yet understanding its full scope. The Zephyrian delegate continued the explanation. We have realized that in our efforts to create perfect galactic civilization, we have created perfect galactic stagnation. Every member species follows the same technological development paths, uses the same proven methods, arrives at the same predetermined solutions. Your refusal to accept our guidance forced us to examine something we had not questioned for eons, the council speaker added. We asked ourselves, when did any council species last make a discovery that surprised us? When did any of our civilizations last develop a technology that exceeded our projections? The answer hung in the air unspoken, but Sarah could see it in the body language of every delegate present. The galactic civilization that humanity had been invited to join had achieved peace and prosperity at the cost of innovation and growth. Furthermore, the Vorthan representative continued, we have observed something else disturbing. Several of our member species have begun requesting modifications to their integration protocols. They want to study human methods. Some are asking for permission to reintroduce controlled conflict and challenge into their societies. Sarah finally found her voice. You're saying our refusal has caused other species to question their membership? Not question, the energy being corrected. Evolve. For the first time in millions of years, our civilization is changing in unpredictable ways. Some council members find this terrifying. Others find it exhilarating. The Aquarian delegate's tentacles writhed in what Sarah had learned indicated complex emotional states. 3 species have formally requested partial withdrawal from council guidance. They want to rediscover what they call the struggle that shapes character. The Nexari have begun reintroducing competitive elements into their society. The Veiltar are experimenting with allowing technological development outside approved parameters. And the results? Sarah asked. Chaotic, the crystallite chimed. Inefficient. Wasteful. Then, in harmonics that conveyed something like wonder. And absolutely unprecedented in their innovation potential. Sarah began to understand the magnitude of what humanity had accomplished simply by saying no. They hadn't just refused membership in galactic civilization. They had accidentally triggered the first genuine evolution that civilization had experienced in eons. This proposal, she said, holding up the contract, isn't really about humanity, is it? The council speaker's colors shifted to patterns Sarah interpreted as rueful acknowledgement. Perceptive. This proposal is about creating a control group. We want to study what happens when a species develops without our guidance. We want to see what innovations emerge from chaos, what breakthroughs arise from struggle, what discoveries come from the freedom to fail. You want to learn from us, Sarah realized. We want to remember how to learn, the Zephyrian corrected. Your species has reminded us that growth requires risk, that innovation requires the possibility of failure, that evolution requires the freedom to become something unexpected. Sarah looked around the chamber, seeing the assembled representatives of galactic civilization with new eyes. These weren't superior beings offering guidance to a lesser species. These were ancient civilizations that had traded their capacity for growth for the certainty of peace, and they were only now beginning to understand what they had lost. If we accept this proposal, Sarah said carefully, what guarantee do we have that the Council won't change its mind when our methods produce results you don't like? None, the energy being replied honestly. But consider this. You have already demonstrated that humanity can say no to the galaxy and make it stick. You have proven that your species doesn't need our permission to be what you choose to be. Sarah smiled. And, for the first time since the negotiations began, it was answered by what she could only interpret as smiles from creatures that didn't have faces. In that case, she said, on behalf of humanity, I accept this proposal. We will remain human, pursue our own path, and occasionally share what we learn with anyone interested in listening. As the chamber erupted in sounds, lights, and patterns that conveyed celebration in a dozen different ways, Sarah realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They had joined galactic civilization not by conforming to it, but by forcing it to evolve to accommodate them. The galaxy would never be the same, and, for the first time in eons, that was exactly what it needed.